Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and the week of pain continues. Again, it's just gonna be killer here. We're gonna have videos every day about the new Kickstarters and whatever's coming up. We'll also talk about HeroQuest, although that will probably be next week. But in any case, let's talk about 7th Citadel. And to cut straight to the chase, will this game hold its value? 100% yes. Should you back it? Probably, and let's get into that. So, 7th Citadel. 7th Citadel is the new game after 7th Continent from French publisher Serious Poulp, and they're taking that basic idea of 7th Continent, the basic game of laying out cards and exploration and simple actions and simple, pretty accessible game, all things considered, for considering the giant sprawling game that it is. And then they're doubling down on the elements that they think worked well, and then they're tweaking and adjusting different elements of the game, either to improve it or to vary it, giving you a different game experience. So if you thought this was basically just 7th Continent 2.0, it's not. It's 7th Continent 2.4 or something like that. It's definitely got elements that change the game up, and they go into that. Let's see over here. Let's go through, before we go into what they do, let's talk about 7th Continent briefly for those who don't know, and as usual, timestamps down below for, well, if you want to skip to any particular section. 7th Continent is a massive world-building game where you are laying out these cards one at a time. You are exploring the world. Every time you see one of these cards, you can go to one side or the other and then pick an action that will reveal different parts of the island that you are locked on. Throughout the game, you would be managing different things from your items, from your gear, from your health, which is the cards represent your health. So every time you take an action, you're slowly depleting your health, and you have to occasionally hunt for food to replenish it. It is this massive, sprawling adventure game, which is 80% exploration, 20% game mechanics, but it is 100% fun. And 7th Citadel takes that game and keeps a lot of those elements, but shifts some of those elements up. And over here, they have a nice section over here which covers what's new in 7th Citadel. I think there's more. You can get more of a feel for it by, well, either playing the game or watching various reviews from Rado to Man vs. Meeple to the different reviewers out there who put out a good feel for what's different in the game. But some of those aspects over here is, first of all, this game is more combat based. They have this life tracker over here. You can see this life tracker. That's not something that ever existed in 7th Continent. 7th Continent had your deck were your cards. Your deck were your life force, effectively, and as you depleted those, that's when you would eventually die. In this game, it's very different. They do all the depleting your deck does have a consequence. Ultimately, your life is, well, how you will die, and there's more of a combat focus in this game. Some of the cards will give you more of a combat action in terms of how to have an actual combat back and forth and hopefully win, or die or whatever, or have to come back with a better deck, with better cards, better whatever. The game also has legacy elements, including aspects of where you return to your citadel, you'll be growing your city, but there's more of a legacy element. There's a whole adventure map that you'll be pulling out and marking off different achievements, marking off different things you did, marking off where you are on different tracks. There is more of a legacy element to this game, and while the game will come with a few printouts for you to play with, there will be downloadable copies as well, so it's not a legacy game that will be destroyed, rather it's a legacy game where this single printout they give you will be marked on and tweaked and adjusted as you go through it. So you can still go through it multiple times, but they are making it more of a not necessarily a commitment. You can still play a one-shot adventure, but giving you more of a reason to continue going to the next adventure, to continue off from where you left off with more of an improved deck, effectively, not necessarily deck, more of an improved characters, abilities, whatever it is. The game has less exploration, but also less back and forth. Now, what I mean by that is the game does focus a little bit more on the idea that you'll explore a bit and you'll have these challenges to overcome, these challenges to deal with, but which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your preference. But there's less of the giant sprawling island of just exploring everywhere and just going back and forth. But the less back and forth is a good thing as well. And what I mean by that is 7th Continent had this thing where you constantly had to go back to places you were, either to pivot to a new area that you needed to explore or to just hunt for food because you were running out of whatever, and you had to go back to your hunting grounds, to wherever you can fight different animals and build up your deck again. So overall, this game has a little bit dialed down exploration, a little bit dialed down back and forth, and more of a hurdle system almost, where you face these challenges you'll be overcoming. There's also dialogue. The dialogue of this game is supposed to be very robust. 7th Continent basically had no dialogue whatsoever. You had cards, you'd explore them, you'd read the text, but there's no dialogue system in 7th Continent, whereas 7th Citadel does add more of a dialogue to the game, and the dialogue seems to be well rated so far. Overall, 7th Citadel builds on what 7th Continent did, adding more, which may or may not be for you, and that's a different conversation entirely. Maybe you preferred the simple elegance of 7th Continent and you weren't looking for more gameplay mechanics, in which case, well, 7th Continent is still a great game. You can still get that. Or maybe 7th Citadel is taking an amazing base system and improving upon it in a way that will be better, and, well, in that case, 7th Citadel is definitely for you. And with that, let's drop down to the pledge levels, or pledge level, because as of right now, it's completely singular. And for right now, for 69 euros or roughly $81, we have the Collector's Edition, which is coming with the exclusive Collector's Core box and the free exclusive expansion, as well as all the stretch goals that will be unlocked. And that is basically where we get into the, should you back it, will it hold its value, all those conversations. Now, to begin with, it will hold its value. That's not a question. If anything, this game will be, this game trying to get on the secondary market once the Kickstarter delivers, which is 2 years from now. Factor that in. This is one that they're not telling you it's going to be available in a year. They're telling you it needs another year of playtesting, which makes sense considering the sheer scope of the world they are building, and then followed by a year of actual production, design, finishing all those tweaks to get it to your door. So if you were expecting this game next year, well, hold on to your box of 7th Continent. You still have plenty of time to enjoy that one. 7th Citadel will not be available for 2 years. And of course, it might come early, or it might come later. The tricky part with these deadlines that are much further out is there's two arguments to be made. The first argument is, look at that, finally, a company that's offering and promising a realistic deadline, good for them. And that's definitely great. The problem is, there's always that back of our minds that wonders, well, maybe they're not offering a realistic deadline. Maybe their 2 years will turn into 3, the same way someone else's 1 turned into 2. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that it's the former, that it's a realistic deadline, accounting for the fact that things happen in production, things happen in the process of building a game. And most, if not all, Kickstarter game companies, whatever, are subject to that aspect of expecting and predicting the best case scenario, but then never hitting that, because that's not how life works. And so hopefully 7th Citadel, or hopefully Serious Poulp is taking that seriously, and that 2-year timeline reflects, not the best case scenario, but rather the padded scenario that they are hopefully accounting for. But keep that in mind, 2 years out. If you get it early, well, lucky you, and if you get it later, well, it's Kickstarter, it is what it is. As far as going back to that value aspect, when it does finally ship, when it does finally show up at people's doorsteps, if you think this will be selling for $81, it will not be. It will be selling for $115, $130, $150. Honestly, to a certain degree, it does depend how many backers we get. We're at 16,000 backers as of now. I would be surprised if we get less than 40,000 backers in this game. I mean, 7th Continent, what goes up, had 43,000 backers, and generally what happens is, while there will always be people here who will not get 7th Citadel, generally the degree of hype, the people, both the customers you've acquired, as well as all those people who've seen it, heard about it, explored it, and got into gaming or anything since then, usually want in as well. So I don't know how much higher it would go, but I would be surprised if it got less than 40,000 backers by the end of the campaign, translating to roughly $4 million, more depending on, how many optional buys or stretch or add-ons, any of those stuff are added throughout the campaign. So I would expect nothing less than 4 million and 40,000 backers. More than that would be great for Serious Poulp, but I mean, at 1.3 million day one, they are already smashing this out of the park. And so yes, people will be wanting that game, because just like I said, while those pledge levels will while the number of backers will increase over time naturally, that is true for 2 years from now when this thing delivers. 2 years from now, there will be another 15,000 people, or maybe less, but how many there are, even if there's 5,000 people who want this game, they will want your copy. So if you want to buy a copy for yourself, if you want to buy a copy to resell, you will get your money back. Now, I don't know how much, to be clear, because it always, how many people here are buying an additional copy to resell to pay for their first. Scalping Kickstarters is a game that does work, but in my opinion, it is a game that requires a lot more work and a lot less return than people often think. You have to deal with all that, and what happens if there's an issue in shipping or something or whatever? You can be out your any number of things can go wrong. There are much better ways to get a 30% return on your $100 if you're talking 2 years down the road. I mean, so you're welcome to do it. You'll probably make a few bucks at it, but how much is a different conversation entirely. Just wait for the next Jaws of the Lion. Wait for Frosthaven Jaws of the Lion. That'll be a better opportunity to make a few bucks in the first few days. In any case, as far as resale value or whatnot, as far as whether you should get it, that is an entirely different question, because, and here's the kicker here, we already know from 7th Continent, and the language in this page is very much worded as such. The language in this page very much hints to this idea. We already know from 7th Continent that there will be a core box on Serious Poulp's website. There will be a core box later that is giving you a lesser experience, for sure. A lesser experience than 7th Citadel, the big campaign box is giving you, but it will be sold on Serious Poulp's website, maybe for $59 for a 7th Citadel core box. We don't know the exact details, obviously, but that will be available. And that's obviously cheaper than the $81 now. It's also cheaper than locking up your money for 2 years. It's also cheaper than hoping that you're still invested in gaming in 2 years, which I hope you are. Gaming is a lot of fun. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts that all come down to, hey, you can just get it later on their website. And you will be able to. Now, the reasons to back this Kickstarter and not to wait down the road, well, first of all, the reasons to wait would be for less money. It's unlikely that you'll actually go through all the continent in 7th Citadel anyways. Ask anyone you know who has 7th Continent how many of them have exhausted that game. It's not a lot of people. For sure not a lot of people. And for sure if you have the What Goes Up Must Comes Down expansion, you have not exhausted the amount of content in 7th Continent, so you don't need all of it. And so that first reason to get the one on the website down the road will be, it's cheaper and you won't miss out on any of that content for the most part. 2 is you can wait to see how reviews come in. Sure, there's a lot of hype now. A lot of people seem to like it now. Speaking of which, I will have my own review coming up, even possibly this Saturday, maybe next. I don't know exactly, but I'll have a review coming up for sure. And you might want to wait to see more reviews. What is the average Board Game Geek rating? How many people love this game? How many people like this game? How many people are pulled in compared to 7th Continent? Maybe 7th Continent is the better game. At the end of the day, when someone tweaks an existing system that is well loved, that can go either direction. So maybe it's worth waiting, and that's a good reason to wait. And then 3, obviously, is you're not locking up your money for 2 years. In addition to being cheaper, it is not locking up your money. And now that I've given you all the reasons to wait, let's give you the reasons why you should back now. And number 1 is you're going to have more stuff, more content for sure. And even something like this Kickstarter, this Edge of Peril expansion over here, this one doesn't give you some sort of extra island cards that may be hard to integrate into your game that you have to go through existing content. This gives you something you can integrate right off the bat. It's something that you can just shuffle into your exploration cards and use these off the bat. So some of the content you get in this game will not be stuff that you have to exhaust, but rather stuff that will be playable day one. Number 2 is in terms of selling your copy later, it's going to be harder to resell. If you get the 7th Citadel core box and try to sell it down the road, it's less likely you'll get your full amount of money back because they'll just buy it themselves on the website. Why do they need to go through you? So they'll have to take a bit of a loss. Might not be a lot, but you'll take a bit of a loss. Versus 7th Citadel Kickstarter exclusive, you will not take a loss when you resell that. So if this game is a game that does not stay in your collection, the 7th Citadel one is probably a better back than waiting for the website. And 3 is waiting for the website will take time. There are no guarantees about the degree of when you're actually going to have it available. I mean, 7th Continent was out for years before people could buy it for retail on their site. So yes, it leaves a bit of a sour taste in some people's mouths to some extent, but you will have your game for a long, long time earlier, 100%. This is one that there are many reasons to wait for the retail copy, and there are many reasons to back the Kickstarter now. But, I mean, there's a lot of hype, and this is $81 isn't that much money, right? But then again, there also are optional buys. So for over here, we have the for €69, $81, we have the exclusive collector's box, the exclusive expansion, and all unlocked stretch goals, and we'll go through those shortly. But then we have the add-ons over here, which we have sleeves. In general, my usual plug here for Sleeve Kings, not a sponsor by any means, although they probably should be by now, but not a sponsor by any means, but I generally like Sleeve Kings. I find them to be the best hybrid of production quality and value and cost. I have my entire 7th Continent game sleeved in Sleeve Kings. My entire, I don't know if I have What Goes Up Must Come Down. I don't know about that. But I have 7th Continent and a ton of expansions sleeved full of Sleeve Kings, whatever. And you don't need all of them, by the way. In general, the recommendation is you can protect your action cards, which are the cards you're handling the most, or if you're crazy like me, you can actually just protect everything because you're crazy like me. And speaking of which, for $69, you get all these sleeves, and because those sleeves add thickness to the game, they are giving you a full extra box, as well as these amazing deluxified foam padding or whatever it is, to handle that, which is a great idea because I sleeved my copy and it's tight. It's very tight to actually get through that. It's a little bit more of a hassle to get through all the cards because I have to riffle a little harder. So take that into account. If you do like sleeving everything, while I recommend Sleeve Kings in general, I can't deny that a full extra core box is tempting. It's interesting. Is it worth almost the full price of another game? Probably not. Your best bet there is to buy 2 copies and sell off the rest in some sort of, sell off the other cards to someone else for $69 and say, hey, you got a deal. There's no box here, but it's $69 instead of $81 plus shipping. So, who knows? There are definite options at the table here, but overall, it's worth noting, yes, basically these are the extra add-ons you can get, and there will probably be more add-ons. I would be surprised if a playmat doesn't show up. I would be surprised if a few extra modules and expansions don't show up. Just look at their past campaigns to get a feel for how they handle things. As far as stretch goals, so far we have some more advanced skills over here, some exploration cards, which they choose not to show us because that's part of the mystery. They have some free Citadel leaflets. Those are those things you're going to mark off, and they're giving you extra ones. So yes, you can always download printable copies, but this gives you more of a game length or game playability to using those leaflets in your game while still feeling like you're using a deluxe copy. Yeah. And then we have new weapons over here, and it's going to be more and more. Like I said, this campaign will probably hit 4 million, if not more. That is a lot of time for a lot of things to be added. If you have every $150,000, if you had an extra 5-10 cards added, that will add up quickly throughout the course of this campaign. Like most campaigns, we have that usual thing. People want to see everything all at once, and they're 5 cards for 150,000. That's crazy. That's a ripoff. That's not how stretch goals work. Stretch goals are not meant to reflect the amount of money that is involved. Once you hit 1.3 million for a campaign, it's not about the increased production, whatever it is. Rather, it is about the fact that they want to keep the hype going throughout this campaign. We have how many days it is? We have 22 days for the hype to go through this campaign, for people to stay invested, and having stretch goals, having a little bit of extra, a little bit more every single day reminds you why you are being sucked into this world. And that is 7th Citadel. And by the way, last thing we should cover here, shipping. Shipping will be between 18 to 20 for US, as much as 47 to 59 in these various areas, so look into that. That will definitely add to your costs. Again, same thing, not again, but still same thing. It's still going to hold its value. You'll still be able to get your cost plus shipping back, not a question at all. Eventually down the road, that will obviously change, and for sure if there's a second Kickstarter, which they've noted there's no plans for a second Kickstarter, but, you know, plans are plans, and we'll go from there. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. 7th Citadel is a game that you should definitely consider backing if you are in any way intrigued by this game, by what it is doing, or by 7th Continent. This is a game you should consider backing. But also realize that if you have 7th Continent and what goes up must come down sitting on your shelf and you're not getting them to the table, is there a reason you're backing this one? You think this one is suddenly going to hit the table more? Or is that just part of the FOMO aspect of I want it now, and I don't know... I just want the games. They're pretty, they're nice, I like them. And those are all decisions you can make yourself. I just want to put that thought out there that, in general, I mean, anyone who backed Frosthaven when they haven't played any of their Gloomhaven, it's a question. We live in this world full of hype and wanting and needing the next thing. But if you're a collector, fine. If that's your goal, by all means. But if your goal is to actually play these and you're not currently playing the ones you have, I don't think 7th Citadel will solve that problem magically for you. If 7th Continent is a game that you haven't been getting to the table and you like it, if you didn't like it and you think this improves, that's a different conversation. But if you like 7th Continent and you aren't getting it to the table, then ask yourself seriously, why are you backing 7th Citadel? I am all for selling people on how good this game is. I am all for selling people on the value aspect of this game. But also, we live in a hype mentality, a hype culture in board games, and Kickstarter only makes that hype worse and harder to resist because we need it, and if we don't get it now, we won't be able to get it later. But again, if you aren't playing 7th Continent and you already like that game, 7th Citadel will not change that at all. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the rest of this crazy week because, well, it's going to be expensive. Have a good one.